Welcome to this evening's lecture, which I've called Towards a New Economic World Order. In this lecture, I will briefly try to account for an historical economy and show how the economic thought has developed through time and how the economy, and especially the banking system, appear today, and how there are, according to Martinus, two major forces fighting in our society: the power of the state and power of money. In the second half of the lecture, I will talk about Martinus's point of view on the world economy and his visions for the future, an emerging new world state. Certainly not to confuse with modern conspiracy theories or horror scenarios. Modern economy is, of course, a very complicated subject. And tonight I will only address the main ideologies behind economic thought and present the banking system in a reasonably simple way, but still in a principled way. In the spirit of Martinus' teaching, the things that I say about the banking system in this lecture, and eventually some individuals, is of course in no way a criticism of the banking system or of the power of money, only an analysis of the state of things and how they truly reflect a certain mentality, a mentality belonging to a certain evolutionary state that mankind is now experiencing. The climax of materialistic epoch, or in other words, doomsday. And what we are witnessing is the downfall of world culture and the birth of a new world culture, where the human being is partly subjected to the living conditions of the animal kingdom and partly subject to the living conditions of the human kingdom. We can see how economy, or power of the money, is the governing force or power on the planet today. So in reality, those who control the economy, they control the affairs of the world. This is the world that we live in today. But it hasn't always been like that. In antiquity and up through historical times, it has typically been a king or a sovereign ruler that has owned the land and controlled the money or the economy. And we see a movement from what we can call exchange economy to market economy. Exchange economy, that's where people in ancient time exchange goods and commodities with other goods and commodities. Later we have what we can call commodity money, which are typically coins that have a certain value in themselves, gold, for example. And then in our time we have what we can call a representative money which only represents a value, and they have no value in themselves. So if you look at the economy in a historic way, we can say up to the 1300s, Jews and Knights Templars. Okay, this is not working. No problem. Cleared the way for Europe's first banks and had a monopoly on the money lending, currency, money transfer. And after the 1300s, we see the first emerging of the first banks in Italy, which they quickly gained monopoly in Europe. And we see a rise of a number of big families in Europe, for example, the Fokker family, which is a German family money and trading dynasty, which dominated the European economy in the 1500s and 1600s with great political influence. And after the 1820s, we have the family called the Rothschild family, which dominates the European economy. And they finance wars and industrialize the whole of Europe. With, of course, benefits of the heightening of the living standards for people, as well as at the same time gaining enormous wealth. And I have a quote here from Nathan Mayer Rothschild, who was a second generation of the Rothschild banking dynasty, and once actually the wealthiest man on earth. And he says, "I care not what puppet is placed upon the throne of England to rule the empire on which the sun never sets. The man who controls the British money supply controls the British Empire, and I control the British money supply." So he was very clear on who was in control. So we could say already in the Middle Age, and in fact earlier, and then of course later, we see a growing influence from money lenders and growing class of merchants that they come to challenge the power of state and the monarchy. And if a monarch wanted to build something big or go to war, he often had to lend money from those money lenders. And then we have some economic theorists that have had a great influence on how we think about money or economy today. And we have Adam Smith, who is often called the father of capitalism or father of economic liberalism. And economic liberalism, in which the key concepts are private ownership and a free market without government intervention, where goods are produced and sold based on supply and demand. And it's believed to be the most conducive to the development of prosperity for all people, of course. The fact that natural freedom entails order in the economy is based on two assumptions. First, that the individual in his dispositions largely seeks his own economic advantage. Secondly, that everyone competes with each other to obtain such benefits. So the view of man's role in the economic life is that he is selfish and is always competing with others to obtain better living conditions. There is no form or no room for neighborly love or altruism in this worldview, one can say. And Marx, on the other hand, Karl Marx, he's a proponent for the power of state. And when he gave his main work, The Capital, he gave it the subtitle, A Critic of Political Economy. It was precisely the classic economic theory he had in mind. And communism, according to Marx, an alternative political and economic system in which private property was removed and the state owned and controlled the companies, production and pricing. Work is the basic substance of all exchange value. The amount of work put into a commodity determines the exchange value of the commodity. And here Marx is actually quite accurate and very much on the same wavelength as Martinus when he is analyzing what is truly value, the working ability of the human being. So this notion that everyone is equal and the people own the production apparatus together is a very beautiful and humane idea. But unfortunately, all the states that have tried this idea have become more or less materialistic dictatorship eventually. Not to name any names. And then we have a very interesting economist, John Maynard Keynes, who wrote The General Theory of Employment. And his work is mainly, I feel, the experiences from the First World War and also the Wall Street stock market crash in 1929. So his thinking is based on those experiences. So we call him the founder of modern macroeconomics, and he is trying to further develop the economic liberalism. But the state should play an active role in times of crisis by investing in the public sector and thus preventing mass unemployment. So from this experience from the 20s and the 30s, you can say that the state actually has to play some role to try to block the most primitive tendencies from the capitalism, from the power of money. And this idea is very dominating from the mid-30s to the early 70s. But already from the 40s and 50s, we see a rise of a new economic thought, which is based on the old one, and the Neoliberalism, Friedrich Hayek and Milton Friedman and figures like that. And that will play, as we say later, will come to play a huge role in our times. John F. Kennedy, President of the United States, he made a speech at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in '61, which he is talking about the hidden power of money. And he says, "For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence." And further, it is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. And other presidents in the US have also addressed this question. What Kennedy tried to do in '63, because we have the central bank in USA, it's called the Fed, the Federal Reserve, is actually a private-owned bank formed in 1913. And the Fed is a privately owned central bank that has the exclusive right to issue and print money and takes interest to lend the state money if the state has to do some big buildings or projects. So he wanted to give the state the right to issue and print money again, something that the Federal Reserve, of course, had exclusive rights to. So these Unity States notes were issued as interest and debt-free means of payment tied to the state silver reserve. And then when Kennedy was assassinated, the new banknotes were taken out of circulation, and the Federal Reserve note again became the prevailing means of payment. So there has been already there and earlier an awareness of the struggle between the power of state and power of money. So Kennedy was actually making an attempt to take the power of the money back to the state, as I understand his actions. And further with the historical economy in the 70s, we see people and the power of money became discontent with growing tax bill, rising regulation, and unions pushing wages with growing tax bill. And Nixon in '97, he took the dollar price, or separated the dollar from the gold price, and the last gold standard was abolished. And debt money could be created more freely, which I will address later, how the private banks actually create the money today. And then we have a new concept, command money or fiat money. And the basic idea is that the government or the central bank actually declare the money for legal. It just said this currency is good, you can use this currency. So it kind of backs it up, if you can say it like that. But actually it's more the private banks that create money nowadays. And in the 80s, we have Reagan and Thatcher, of course, who represent a strengthened right wing and a great willingness to deregulate and push welfare and trade unions, the liberalization of capital. In the 90s, we have socialist and center-left parties that join in. Bill Clinton deregulates in the financial sector, and in Denmark, we have Poul Nyrup, which government privatizes much of the economy. So at this point of view, the politicians, you could say, they have given up against the power of money. They just believe that the market economy should govern it by itself. So, and since the 80s, and especially after the 1997, the world economy has been characterized by exceptionally large international deregulation with a huge credit expansion in a new financial products in the loan market. And 1999 we had the euro emerge, which of course is an attempt to make peace in a divided Europe and to strengthen the US position in the world economy, to ensure stability and be less vulnerable to inflation. So, neoliberalism, the new religion today, is a political ideology as opposed to social liberalism, as we know here in Scandinavia. And there's an extension of classical liberalism that is against any intervention of the state into social life and the market economy. Deregulation of the labor market and the financial sector is necessary for creating growth. Competition is the buzzword or the mantra of this economic thought. Martinus would say the new buzzword is working together, not competition. And stability of a monetary policy and low inflation is more important for this kind of thought than securing employment for everybody. And when we look at modern economy, we see a ruling ideology of the world. And in my humble opinion, it's a new religion. And the least sustainable and quixotic ideology that ever has existed, which creates inequality and destroys the climate. Well, of course, the Earth is a living being, so it has something to say about the climate, of course. And we see deregulation on financial markets that bear the main responsibility for the financial crisis. The state pays the bill when things go wrong. So the main idea of liberalism that the state should not intervene at all in any way, but when it goes wrong, they come running. And the state has to pay. We have to pay, taxpayers. So today, after the financial crisis of 2007-09, market forces are actually running unobstructed again, but are now being challenged by anti-establishment parties, right and left, and we see a rise of dictatorship and different places. So there are some, which I feel, there are some economic myths connected to this school of thought, this liberalistic school of thought. And one of those myths is how money is created, because we have all these idea that grandmother and we all put the money in the bank, and then the bank loans this money again further to other individuals. But actually how it functions, and this is a report from some experts working for the Central Bank of England. And they state in the modern economy, most money takes the form of bank deposits. But how those bank deposits are created is often misunderstood. The principal way is through commercial banks making loans. Whenever a bank makes a loan, it simultaneously creates a matching deposit in the borrower's bank account, thereby creating new money. So banks are actually today, to a high degree, lending out money. For the first, they don't have it money. They can create it from nothing. Of course, there is a limit, but they, in principle, they lend out money that they don't have. And at the same time, they are creating money in the economy. And today it's like that. For example, the private financial sector in Denmark stands for 95% of the creating of money in the society. And before, it was, of course, the central bank that printed all the money. But since the 70s, when we started to deregulate the market and money became more digital or electronic, the private bank slowly took over this function of creating money. And this cost the states really huge sums every year. So a solution would actually be for the state and the central banks around the world to take this function back home, because there's a lot of money involved in the private banking system creating money by loans. So, new trends, I just want to mention one, because in Switzerland, they had a referendum in 2015 about giving this power of making money back to the central bank. But unfortunately, this proposal in this case was voted down. They had some similar ideas in Sweden not so long ago. So this is, the new ideas that I think eventually are going to make it through. And another myth, of course, if you watch, for example, some politicians argue in the television or someplace, and then the liberalists, they're always talking about this trickle-down effect. Then when you give tax cuts to the rich people, then every part of society will be lifted up. And Charlie Brown here it's a funny sketch. He says, if you cut taxes on the rich, they'll invest that money and create jobs for everyone. That's the trickle-down effect, really, in a nutshell. But actually, what happens, the theory is that increased spending, and we will get increased spending and entrepreneurship, that these people that get tax cuts, they will create more businesses and more jobs, more investment and jobs, faster economic growth. And many economists think that negative effects of tax cuts are now outweighing the positive. But the reality of this trickle-down effect is that mostly saved and invested in the money that they save, actioners and stockholders and rich people that get tax cuts, they save the money and invest them in assets or tax havens. They take the money and put them in tax havens where they don't have to pay taxes from them. And of course, use the money to, buy bigger boats and bigger airplanes. And so only in small extent, they use the money that they get from the tax cuts to create jobs for others or new business opportunities. So that creates greater inequality, more debt accumulated by the poor, and slower growth and financial crisis. So Carl Friedrich Weill, who was a former associate professor in economics, he said, inequality is the mother of all problems. If we don't solve that, we will never get a future with peace, welfare, and prosperity. And inequality, growing inequality together with climate change is the biggest threat against peace and prosperity in the world. But inequality is the result of politics, in some ways, of course, and therefore we can do something about it. I think we will, in the future, do something more about it. There's a reason that things are as they are today, of course. The 26 richest people in the world now own as much as 3.8 billion of the poorest people. And we have the global wealth pyramids, and we have 64% of the world population own 1.9 of the world wealth. We have 26% of the world population, they own 13%, almost 14% of the world wealth. We have 8.7% of the world population that own 39% of the world wealth, and only under a 1% that own 44% of the world wealth. So about 1% of the world population owns half. So this is a great problem, of course. So new theories, new ideas. We have a modern theorist, economist from France, Thomas Piketty, which published his book, The Capital in the 21st Century, 2013. And he has done a comprehensive empirical studies of 200 years of growth, return on capital and tax payments. And they show that increased prosperity for the very rich has not benefited us as all. This is a really, really serious work that Thomas Piketty has done. And he comes to the conclusion that the alleged trickle-down effect has been rejected. It has no effect. Return on, for example, equities and real estate increase more than real weights, and that means that economic inequality will inevitably increase as wealth becomes more concentrated. So the richest get even richer, while the rest of the world experience stagnant wage increases and a declining share in the continued prosperity for few people. So this is pretty much how we are today in the world. And as I said earlier, according to Martinus, we are living in the times where we see the culmination of materialism. And from a cosmic point of view, this materialism and inequality is a natural effect of the mental state mankind is in at the moment, where we have to experience culmination of materialism, the rest of the animal mentality in ourselves, to be able to go forth and eventually create a more peaceful world for everyone. And according to Martinus, there is the New World Impulse, which is a cosmic impulse of inspiration for mankind. They started to shine over the planet in around year 1900. And we see the beginning of spiritual science in different ways, powerful intelligence development, materialism, atheism, abstract art, individualism and freedom, greater freedom, and humanism. So when this new light of the cosmic impulse is starting to shining towards Earth, we see a lot of growth in human activity because of this great heighten of the ability of intelligence. So some people use the intelligence to grow longer claws and continue the animal kingdom, or make it bigger, make bombs and weapons to control other beings. And some people use their intelligence, of course, to create medicine in hospitals and better living conditions for other humans. So culmination of materialism. This is the state that we are in now. And the time, of course, where everybody is at war with everybody, like mentioned in the Bible. So we are living in the epoch of doomsday, which Martinus explains as a mentally cleansing bath. And doomsday, of course, sounds really harsh, you can say. He says in the collection articles, it will cost mankind an ocean of life's blood and tears to get into contact with the laws of life. Only through feeling regret for one's sin against one's enemy does the road lead into the new earth and new heaven. The mission of doomsday is to remind people of the forgotten love for the neighbor. So the doomsday is, of course, a huge collective calming wave that is soon hitting mankind, and has, of course, already been going on for 100 years. And the principle of business, Martinus states, which he actually describes as a system of robbery. He describes our culture as a culture of robbery. We are living in a robbery culture. And he says in the Book of Life 4, what is the authorized, thank you, Mary, business system within European culture other than a largely bloody exploitation of fellow beings, working capacity, and their potential for manifesting or creating a heartless plundering of the fruits of other beings' physical and mental abilities. So it sounds very harsh, but these words are nevertheless very true, I feel. And the principle of business, Martinus says that on the other side, that the true principle of business is a cosmic principle. And when it's used as a cosmic exchange principle, it's same value for same value. But the false business principle, which dominates the world today, and the principle of the false business principle, of course, is to make the most out of the least, by the least input gaining the most output. And he states the robbery of the past continues, camouflaged within the business world. So I mentioned when I started that there's two things that are really fighting, two powers fighting in the world, you could say. And that's the power of the state and the power of money, selfishness and selflessness. And the power of money is the private interest. Private interest. And we have overpriced goods, distress, and misery, because the most important thing is gaining profit at any cost. Profit at any cost. That's the ideology. And this ideology, of course, causes hatred, competition, and leads to revolution, as we have seen in the history, and war, mutilation, and disease. And on the other side, we have the power of state, which is basically common interest, development of law and justice for all, protection, free schools, hospitals, assistance to old and sick, and development of common social goods. And of course, we could say this is a kind of a future, because the state is, of course, not perfect now, and certainly around the world there are many states that still persecute and punish their citizens in a violent way. But this is absolutely the future, where the state becomes the only guarantee for a human development against the primitive mentality and traditions from the animal kingdom. And we have the movement, so we see a historical movement from dictatorship towards true democracy, from the flock consciousness or flock mentality towards a more human form of living with personal freedom and growing individualization. And the doomsday we are experiencing is in many ways a showdown between the idea of dictatorship, which we have seen the last 10, 20 years is growing actually on the world scene, and a material and a religious dictatorship where people often are governed by fear. And at the same time, we see a development of a more human democracies or way to govern a society. So he says here in Martinus, in the Book of Life 4, number 4, terrestrial human beings can thus no longer be saved through dictatorship, because we have gone through a long evolution where our ability to have instinct, the feeling of instinct that has governed the animal kingdom. We have gained a lot of intelligence, the capacity of analyzing things and thinking things over. So terrestrial human beings cannot thus no longer be saved through dictatorship. They are no longer to be herded together, but are to be individualized. They are to become beings who think and act independently. And I can understand with people when you say people are going to be more individualized, and people often think, are we going to be more egoistic? But no, says Martinus, we will be more individualized, but at the same time there's ability inside, ability of neighborly love and empathy for our neighbor, which is growing at the same time. So individualization is not a bad thing in this constant. So, cosmic communism. According to Martinus, the true democracy is the same as what cosmic communism or neighborly love is. And he says in the same book, Book of Life, evolution is the only road to communism, for communism is not a political system that has been invented or concocted. It is a step in evolution on which neighborly love, which here means a sense of community, collectivity, or a recognition of interdependency, is sacred. It's a commandment and a vital condition of life. So this is a different view, because when people hear the word communism, we all get, oh no, communism, because whoa, how many people were killed in a country far away from here once, and as I said, we have in these countries that have tried out communism, they have unfortunately developed to dictatorships of a kind. So, future visions, where are we going? In the past, we have seen revolutions and wars which have subsequently led to more human ideas about how to organize societies. And the United Nations have formulated the human rights, as we all know. And recently they have formulated 17 sustainable development goals. I'm just going to quickly go through them. My point is that the ideas, they are out there. They are formulated. We just have to start to follow all these ideas that actually exist. So no poverty, zero hunger for everybody, of course, good health and well-being, quality, education for all, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure, reduced inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, that's probably taking care of the fish, life on land, peace, justice, and strong institutions, and partnerships for the goals. Creating partnerships around the world between different countries and so on. And these are, of course, very beautiful goals that we have for the future. So the ideas, they are there. If we look at the Martinus vision for the future, he sees with his cosmic side, or with his cosmic consciousness, how the culture on Earth gradually will develop towards a world government, a peaceful and human culture where every person is regarded as a great asset for the world state, and every person is able to work in the field that they most desire or which they have talents for. So the machines will develop in such a way that they will overtake most of the production. And of course, humans will own the production apparatus together. And I know some people might think, the machines, because we have seen so many films where the machines actually take over. And no, the machines are not going to take over, but they are going to be tools so that we can reduce the time that we have to go to work. And that time we can use on creativity and spiritual science and so on. So, the economy of the future, no one can monopolize the Earth's natural resources. The world state will own every commodities and every natural resources. So the people on Earth will own these resources together, of course. And money will eventually be abolished. We don't need the banking system anyhow, not in the current state that it is. And the false business principle will be forbidden eventually. Human work ability will be the only value, what I can contribute to the world state. And he's talking about that we don't need to work so much because, like I said, the machines will take over. So maybe 2 hours a day, 2-3 days a week, maybe 4, 5, 6 hours every week. I don't know. It depends on, because there will be machines on computers that will calculate how much every single being will have to work to sustain their life from childhood, because we will pay for our childhood, and for adulthood and for our old age. So we will get a kind of a life pass, he said, and that's a kind of funny because he was talking about work receipts and life passes and cards, and we actually all have cards in our pocket now. And he was talking about this in the 30s. So now we all have plastic cards that we can gain access to everything. So this life work receipt and life pass replaces the money system. And like I said, each will pay for itself. And if you look at politics and society, we will develop, according to Martinus, towards a perfect democracy, a cosmic communism teaching of Christ, neighborly love or empathy. And there will be high standard of living for everybody because we own the things together. There's no individuals that will be allowed to gain a lot of commodities or power or wealth. We don't need it because everybody actually, if we divide the commodities on earth, there will be enough for everybody. So high standard living, access to all necessities of life. We will have world police in this world state, and they will of course be humane and not go around and killing people, but protecting people. One world language, Martinus talks about. And all cultures on the planet can keep their language and culture as long as they want. There will not be any pressure or moving this culture to another place because it's got better to have 1 million people there and so on. So every culture on earth will be able to keep their own cultural distinctions as long, and their language as long as they will. There will be no like oppression or so. And he also talks about a bee society where more primitive people don't have to go anymore to prison, but will live in a closed areas where they can live life according to their own mentality and get a pedagogical support and knowledge about life. And of course, this bee society will emerge with a more humane or developed society later on. And this bee-size society, primitive, or a little bit more primitive people that like to live life dangerously, they will get the opportunity to experience the rough sides of their mentality and have families and live a very a normal life. And let's see, in this new culture, people will become more and more humane. And eventually, there will rise a great desire in their mentality to serve others and create things through art and science that will benefit and create joy for all the human beings. So the gift principle will be the dominating principle and the highest desire for the human being. Spare time is used for education and culture. We will get a lot of spare time. So people will, as their mentality grows, they will be more interested in culture and science and of course spiritual science as well. And everyone gets educated in the areas that they feel inspired. If you want to play the piano, you will work as a piano player for the world state. If you like to paint pictures, that's you, then you will work as a painter for the world state. If you like to build buildings, you can do that for the world state. So there will be a great awareness of children, which capacities, which talents they have, and try to guide them in the best way where they feel that their talents and they will feel most joy in expressing life. And of course, this society will develop the highest standards for healthy living, vegetarianism, veganism, eventually fruitarianism, and so on. And the world state is a quote from a Book of Life number 4, where Martinus is writing about this coming world state. And he says somewhere that around 500 years that we will actually have the contours of this world state, but it will first be fully developed in around 3,000 years. But he talks about that we will conduct Christ's policy in about 500 years. In the perfect domain of internationalism, all peoples are but members of or subjects of one single nation. And this nation cannot comprise anything less than the entire mankind of the planet. So all the nations and the states of the planet are but provinces in a single lawful sovereign state common to them all. This state has only one sovereignty, one supreme administration or authority. Here no one fights anymore for supremacy or a master race existence. The bloody areas of anarchy in which something like this could take place no longer exist. So this is a really beautiful vision for the future. And he has a symbol which you can look at. This is how the world state looks like graphically. And in the middle we see a representation of the world government, and these arrows here represent different areas of the world, different countries that all point toward this world government. And of course we will have the highest developed democracy in the world. It's a very beautiful symbol. And I have actually 10 minutes left. So, good. Then I can read the 12 guidelines for the world state, which Martinus writes about in the Book of Life, number 1. When he writes, number 1, the victory of unselfishness over selfishness in all forms. That's to say, the victory of common interest over private interest. Number 2, the creation of an international democratic world government. Number 3, the disarmament of all countries and the establishment of an international impartial world police force. And number 4, the development of an international, undisguised, not secret, supreme system of law and justice represented by science, most eminent people in spiritual as well as in material fields, who will be qualified to know the difference between abnormal actions and crimes, having knowledge of the course of evolution and the eternal laws of life, which would thus guarantee absolute justice for everyone and everything. Number 5, the abolition of the possession by the private individuals of valuable goods and their appropriation by the world state. The world state will own everything. The abolition of money and the establishment of the personally rendered work of the individual as the only means of payment for him. Number 7, the establishment of one fund for childhood, old age and illness, covering the whole of the world state, and founded on the basis of deductions from work receipts. So we all come to pay for our lives. There's nobody that can, not pay for their lives. Number 8, the use of machines for shortening material working hours and the replacement of these working hours by days for study and spiritual research. Number 9, the abolition of bloodshed and policies of violence. Number 10, the abolition of torture, corporal and capital punishment, and their replacement by expert arrangements for detention and education. Number 11, the development of vegetarian food, of health, and the care of the physical body, and of light, healthy housing. Number 12, the development of intellectual liberty, tolerance, humanness, and love to all living beings, to people and animals, to plants and to minerals. So these are the points that, according to Martinus, will be a great inspire when we are going to develop and design this new world state and be a kind of a fundament for this new world state. Yes, thank you for your attention.